Good morning, buenos dias. My name is Enrique Moreno, and I am one of the family attorneys of Jakelin, Caal, Maquin. Welcome, thank you for attending today. Today we are hosted by Annunciation House and by Ruben Garcia. Thank you, Ruben. I'm joined by part of the legal team that is representing the family. To my right, Ms. Lynn Coyle, also Mr. Chris Benoit, to my left, Ms. Elena Esparza. I have a prepared statement that we would like to read, and then we will take questions. Jakelin Caal Maquin died on December 8th, 2018, just 5 days after her 7th birthday. 2 days earlier, Jakelin and her father were arrested and taken into custody by U.S. Customs and Border Patrol near Antelope Wells, Port of Entry. There have been tears, sadness, grief, and certainly international sympathy. Since that time, there have also been questions. Why? What did and did not happen at the in Antelope Wells Port of Entry? What happened to Jakelin? Could her death have been prevented? What circumstances, what policies may have contributed to her death? These questions must be answered. They must be answered for the benefit of Jakelin's family and for her memory. They must also be answered for the benefit of the American people, our values, and our institutions. Most importantly, they must be answered so that similar tragedies, if they are in any way preventable, will not be repeated. These questions must be answered by an objective, thorough, and independent investigation. The investigation should not be the exclusive purview of the agencies whose actions and policies are being questioned. The investigator should not be the same entity as the investigated. The events that followed Jakelin's death reinforce this inherent conflict. First, the failure of CBP to comply with federal law in neglecting to timely report Jakelin's death reflects on its commitment or lack of commitment to transparency. Second, the agency's initial statements, a rush to blame Jakelin's father, were false and reflect a lack of objectivity. Finally, the fact that within 48 hours after Jakelin's death, her father, still coping with his loss, was being asked by CBP to sign statements in English. That offends fundamental notions of fairness and decency. These actions undermine the transparency and accountability that a search for the truth demands. We join the voices of many, including the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, that call for an independent investigation into all the facts and circumstances surrounding Jakelin's death. With that, we will take questions.
Mr. Moreno, are you guys going to also provide immigration advice to Mr. Caal in regards of this case? Because we understand he's going to be presented in front of either an ICE judge or immigration judge in January.
Mr. Gauchos certainly faces immigration matters. We have associated counsel and are working with associated counsel so that he be adequately represented.
What forms was he asked to sign? Did he sign them?
He did sign forms. He was asked to sign forms. Again, we think it was untoward and inappropriate to put a father, to put a human being in that situation, certainly given his limited ability, and most importantly, in the trauma of the circumstance. We have asked for those forms, and we have not, at this moment not been provided that information, nor have we even been told that we would be providing those forms.
You don't know what he signed? You don't know what he signed?
We suspect, but we don't have those forms. We've not been provided despite our request.
Did anybody translate it for him, or tell him, or express to him what those forms were?
We have serious reservations with respect to that. Remember, Mr. Caal certainly does not speak any English. Spanish is a second language, and so if they were translated to him, if at all, they were translated to him in Spanish, probably not in the best of circumstances, especially given his state of mind.
And he didn't have lawyers around him or anybody to help him?
He did not.
Have you spoken to Mr. Caal, and have you asked him exactly if he knew what it is that he signed and what it is that they told him? Have you spoken to him?
Of course, we have spoken to Mr. Caal, Mr. Caal was at that point, again, in a state of shock, in a state of profound loss because of just the death of his daughter. We think he was disoriented, probably at that point. He is not in a good position at this time to give any explanation other than forms were provided to him and he was asked to sign.
If I can follow up, when did he communicate to you that he believed he signed?
He's not in a position to describe in any good detail, even his understanding of what he was asked to say.
Can you explain his legal status? Is he undergoing deportation proceedings? Is he requested asylum?
He's requested a credible fear interview as the first step, that initial screen, and he has requested.
Se puede en español. ¿Ustedes perciben negligencia? ¿Esta muerte se pudo haber evitado por parte de la patrulla fronteriza? Y la otra es justamente sobre, entiendo que ustedes no son abogados de migración. ¿Cuál es el estatus de Neri, el papá? ¿Qué procede ahorita? ¿En qué situación está?
Si me permite,
Claro,
son dos preguntas. La primera pregunta, si nosotros estamos acusando, estamos indicando que hubo negligencia. En este momento hay que tener cuidado sobre lo que se está diciendo, por eso estamos pidiendo una investigación profunda, una investigación transparente, una investigación que se sepa todos los hechos antes de llegar a conclusiones. Hay cosas profundamente que nos preocupan de los datos que sabemos en este momento, pero en este momento no estamos haciendo acusaciones. Es necesario esperar el resultado de una investigación correctamente hecha. Sobre la cuestión de la situación de migración.
So, en español, él está pidiendo una entrevista creíble. Es el primer paso en el proceso. Es un derecho bajo las leyes de inmigración y él está siguiendo con este proceso legal.
¿Y hay un día de cita para él presentarse a esa entrevista?
Todavía no hemos recibido una cita. Estamos esperando la cita.
Enrique, your firm and Lynn's firm are two of the premier civil rights firms in town. You both have a long track record of claims against the border law enforcement agencies and other law enforcement agencies. Are you considering any claim at this point in this case, or is it too early to tell?
No decision has been made concerning some type of claim on behalf of the family. We think it is premature to make that judgment. A decision like that would be made only after additional information. Certainly, we hope after a thorough, complete, and neutral investigation. Mr. Caal, who at this point needs representation, we were asked to system, but that decision will be made in due course.
Enrique, have you been able to learn anything more about what happened between 9:15 and 5 in the morning when, from the timeline we've heard so far, that she first started showing signs of being sick? Have you learned anything more about what happened during those hours?
We have learned to some extent. Quince, do you want to address that?
Sure. What we do know, and what our client is unequivocal with, is that no water was provided to either him or his daughter. And my understanding is that that was confirmed by the Congressional Hispanic Caucus yesterday. They were provided cookies, essentially. We also know that they were held in a facility that I believe our congressperson spoke about yesterday. That was essentially a Sally port with limited bathroom facilities and about 163 people. But of course, there are a lot of other questions about what happened between 9:15 and 5 a.m. That we still need.
Can any of you say the same in Spanish, if you would, please?
Lo que entendemos es que la pregunta era qué es los detalles de qué es lo que pasó entre las 9:15 de la noche y las 5 de la mañana. Y lo que podemos decir es, primariamente, señor Caal ha sido insistente de que no recibieron agua en ese periodo, y eso fue constatado por medio del Congressional Hispanic Caucus ayer. Les dieron galletas, lo que entendemos, y que los pusieron en una sala, un salón más o menos para vehículos, 263, donde se quedaron por esta temporada, mientras que un grupo se fue a las 12 de la noche a Lordsburg. Los demás se quedaron en esta sala con baños limitados para la gente que estaba ahí.
A fundamental question that has not been answered, that I think needs to be answered, is because the CBP timeline, what they made public, indicates that Jakelin's first indication that there was some concern, some distress, was sometime about 5 o'clock in the morning, at a time before the bus that she was going to be transported, and was transported, went to Lordsburg, but that at some time before the bus left, sometime around 5 o'clock, there was an indication of distress, and a decision was made at that point to transport her by bus anyway. One of the fundamental questions that needs to be answered that we don't have an answer for is if, in fact, she was in distress, and in the words of the Border Patrol, they had identified it as an emergency, what actions they took it at that point. To our understanding, they should have contacted some type of emergency medical personnel, some qualified medical person to start an evaluation for before she ever leaves from Lordsburg. That was, to our understanding, was not done. Rather, the decision was to transport her, took an hour and a half to Lordsburg, when in fact that contact was made. That is a very important question that to this point we have not been provided an answer.
When you say that they didn't receive water, that contradicts the consul of Guatemala who spoke with the dad and said that the dad said he did receive water. Can you clear up that confusion?
Well, what I can say is we were not present when the consul spoke with Mr. Caal, but we've had numerous conversations with our client. He's been very insistent on that point. And again, like I said, the Congressional Hispanic Caucus seems to have confirmed that point yesterday during their press conference.
There was a question concerning the autopsy on it. Their autopsy is not final. We understand that the medical examiner requires some special tissue testing or some special testing that we were told last week may take as much as 2 weeks. Until that testing is finalized, there won't be a final report from the medical examiner, and there won't be a final death certificate that reflects a cause of death.
Is Jakelin's body still here in El Paso? Is it being transported back to Guatemala?
Okay.
After Jakelin died, the Guatemalan consulate works with a funeral home in Laredo to transport remains back to Guatemala, and the initial plan was to pick up the body at the medical examiners and transport it to Laredo. We asked that be modified so that she could go to a funeral home here in El Paso where her body could be embalmed, and it would give her dad, Nettie, the opportunity to see his daughter one last time before she was sent back, and all of that was complied with. On Friday, there was a prayer service there at the funeral home at 2 in the afternoon, where Nettie was able to spend time with his daughter. A problem arose after that in trying to take the body to Laredo onto Guatemala, in that there was no death certificate, and we needed to get a death certificate for the body to go back. It wasn't until yesterday morning that we finally were able to get a death certificate, and the issue was twofold. One, that there isn't a cause of death, and I think that's very significant. That, and I have a temporary copy of the death certificate, so to speak. It says cause of death pending. And then the second thing is that it's very difficult for basically undocumented individuals to obtain birth certificates, death certificates, so that was difficult. So as of yesterday morning, Jakelin's body was still here in El Paso, and it is no longer here. It is now in Laredo, and it's in Laredo, and we'll wait there until the final arrangements can be made to transport by plane back to Guatemala.
Rubén, si nos podrías decir cuál es el estado emocional actual del padre de Jakelin. No hemos podido hablar con él.
Sí, y yo les pedí el otro día que tuvimos la rueda de prensa, yo les pedí a los medios de comunicación que respetaran el derecho del papá, su derecho de mantener privacidad, y les quiero agradecer a ustedes porque verdaderamente el nivel de profesionalismo de parte de los medios de comunicación ha sido muy impresionante, y les agradezco muchísimo a todos ustedes que han respetado eso. La familia de Jakelin es una familia de una fe profunda, verdaderamente una fe profunda, que Dios sabe el porqué. La mano de Dios está en todo esto, y ellos confían. Neri es una persona, él personalmente, su fe evangélica lo ha sostenido profundamente, y yo he tenido la oportunidad de pasar bastante tiempo con él, y me impresiona. Él obviamente, sintiendo la pérdida de su hija, pero al mismo tiempo muy lleno de la fe que su hija está con Dios. Y hasta a veces me da la impresión que como que hay un cierto envidia de que ella está con Dios ya, que ella es una familia que ha sufrido mucho, y que ella no va a tener que pasar por los sufrimientos que trae la vida, especialmente de una familia como la de ellos, la realidad que ellos han vivido.
Can you repeat the emotional status?
I'm saying that Jakelin's family is a family of great faith. They're evangelical family, and Nevi himself is someone who clearly is sustained by his faith. There is an unequivocal belief, absolutely no doubt in his mind, that God's hand is in this, and that his daughter is now with God. I'm saying that there's a certain, almost like an envy that she gets to be with God now, that she's not going to have to go through all the sufferings that he has in his own life, his family. That as he says, ya se ganó la gloria. She's won the glory of being with God, and so that sustains him profoundly. And really, it's something that I, for one, am deeply grateful for.
Enrique, have you learned anything new, or can you explain some of the process by which this family traveled from Guatemala to smuggling operation? And it sounds like they traveled by bus to this remote area. Have you learned anything about that process?
I don't know whether it is new. I don't know everything that has been reported, but let me have Chris address sort of the events prior to their flight.
You know, and we're not, we don't necessarily have information on every aspect that you asked about. What we can say is that they were not part of a caravan. They were not similar to what the group of folks that were at Tijuana. They left Guatemala, he and his daughter themselves. They traveled through Mexico by bus. They did not walk. And they arrived at the border by bus with the wall in sight. And so when they crossed the border to specifically seek out Border Patrol to seek relief, which was their intention, they had been walking for a few hours, but they had not been walking for days.
Mr. Moreno, I was wondering if you can explain the same thing in Spanish that you said about no pursuing any action on this point because you guys want to see an investigation first. ¿No puede decir eso en español, por favor?
I guess we also just want to clarify something, that our concern about the Department of Homeland Security Office of Inspector General being the only agency that's investigating this incident, our concern with that is that in past DHS OIG investigations, their only inquiry was whether the actions met the standards set out by Border Patrol, which are what were referred to as the TED standards, the Transport, Escort, and Detention standards. That standard, when we can make that available to you, is a very, very, very low standard for medical screening. It is simply a visual inspection of an individual to determine if there's a health or injury issue or an illness. And so we're asking for subject matter experts in the healthcare area, particularly with minors, such as the American Academy of Pediatrics, to look at what happened in that screening process. I think it's important for us to understand that the Constitution sets the standard, not Border Patrol. And the constitutional standard, and the government has admitted this in prior litigation in the Tucson sector, the constitutional standard is that there is a system of ready access to adequate care, and mismanaging or denying proper intake screening is a constitutional violation. So we need an inquiry to look at the actions taken or not taken to understand whether it met our constitutional standards, not the standards set out by Border Patrol. And that's one of our very, very serious concerns. Her life may have been saved very early on in her detention with a face-to-face screening through a structured questionnaire. Or if there were concerns raised at some point about the emergency, such as what Border Patrol is saying around 4:30 or 5 a.m., at that point, there should have been a face-to-face interaction with Jakelin, and the decision as to what to do with her should be made by a healthcare professional, a qualified professional, whether that's getting someone on the phone or on the radio to guide the agents on making a safe decision for Jakelin. And so those are the issues that we want to see, those are the hard issues that we want to see addressed.
Hizo una pregunta, le quiero responder la cuestión sobre si en este momento hay el intento de parte de la familia de iniciar un reclamo, una demanda. Esa decisión no se ha hecho. Queremos actuar responsablemente. Estamos protegiendo los derechos de la familia. pero por eso estamos pidiendo una investigación. Cualquier decisión que se va a hacer sobre un reclamo, una demanda, a este momento no se ha hecho. Esperamos esta investigación, la cual pedimos y ya se ha pedido por muchas voces antes de hacer esa decisión.
Gracias.
Have you made any attempt, because in the investigation, obviously, you need to talk to the witnesses, have you made any attempt to at least ask some of the people who were with her at the time there as if they were being held in that cell report? Have you made a request to talk to some of the witnesses to see exactly what happened?
One thing that needs to be clear too, we talked about 163 people. Jakelin and her father did not come up with that large of a group. They came on a bus with a much smaller group, probably in a period of about 5, perhaps 6 days. There was a convergence of groups. So at the time of their apprehension, there was a group that sort of come together that makes up the 163 people. Those witnesses, certainly some of them may be in a position to cast light concerning that, are not readily available to us. Certainly who those witnesses are and those names are all available to Border Patrol and the DHS because they were all processed. At this point in time, we have names and information and contact information. In due course, we hope and expect that DHS will make that type of information available. It oftentimes, having handled these types of cases, is very challenging. That group of people is very fluid. They don't have sort of stable addresses. Our hope is to get that information because I think you're correct. They're in a position to cast light, at least some of them, concerning the circumstances and what happened at the time. But simple answer to your question is we don't have that information, at least at this point in time.
Ruben,
But
do
again,
any of those people have come through here, the 163?
The way it is presently working, the people were transported to El Paso. The majority of them would have been released, and many of them very likely did pass through one of our hospitality centers. And I think that there are others that continue to pass through here that are apprehended at border crossings that are part of the El Paso sector, which goes all the way to the Arizona state line. So I have to assume that there is a high probability that many of those 163 individuals, when they finally, after they were processed and were released, would have been released to one of our hospitality sites.
That is an expectation that we have on the part of any investigation, and particularly with regards to DHS, because they do control the whereabouts of these people, is that not only that they are preserved so that folks, including investigators and ourselves, may be able to speak with them, but also that any other evidence that may have existed either in Antelope Wells or in Lordsburg be preserved as well.
Does DHS have a policy for not, say, reporting people that are involved in an investigation like this, or maybe witnesses, or could they start reporting people if they really wanted to?
Yeah, I think they certainly have discretion. I'm not aware of any policy across the board that they maintain individuals in the country. In fact, our experience in prior litigation, other cases we've handled in Border Patrol, is that they release individuals in a way that jeopardizes an investigation. I can't speak to what they're doing with respect to this particular case. Our expectation is they would act responsibly and maintain access to those individuals. I will say that in prior litigation, their actions have been times been disappointing.
But to answer your question, no, there is not a policy preventing them from doing that.
Have you guys asked them to make sure they don't do that in this case?
We're in the process of doing that right now.
Can I clarify one thing that was said earlier? I thought I was under the impression, are you guys saying that there were signs that Jakelin was ill before that 5 o'clock time in the timeline?
Well, when I said I want to be clear in terms of the timeline, Mr. Juarez is in a difficult circumstance. He didn't have a watch, he didn't have a cell phone, and so he's not in a position to assess times and say this occurred at this time. We do have the benefit of the Border Patrol timeline. The Border Patrol timeline, at least the one that has been released publicly, indicates that her first indication of distress, or her first indication that she was suffering from an adverse medical situation, was before they left for Lordsburg, before that bus left. In fact, it is described in the Border Patrol timeline as a medical emergency. That's why, when there's a medical emergency, there are, without question, protocols and procedures that need to be followed that include some contact with a qualified medical professional. We know from the Border Patrol timeline that occurred approximately 5 o'clock in the morning. Notwithstanding that, the decision was made for reasons we still don't fully understand, perhaps not to contact a medical professional, but rather to transport her an hour and a half to Lordsburg. We understand from the timeline again provided by Border Patrol that there was some contact while en route with medical professionals, or at least making arrangements for them to be received. Exactly what that contact is, what that information was, we don't know. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, I'm just trying to get a sense of how you guys feel about, at 5 o'clock it seems that she becomes extremely ill. It seems like you've gone from 0 to 100 in a matter of minutes. So and people I've spoken with, they say they think there had to have been signs that something was wrong in those hours. You don't go to 106 fever in a matter of minutes.
And we're not suggesting that it was in a matter of minutes on it. She was detained, arrested with her father at approximately 9:15 in that time frame. We know she was not transported to Lordsburg about 5 o'clock in the morning. So it was about an 8-hour time period. Exactly what her state of health, what her conditions, what potential symptoms occurred in that 8-hour period, we don't have a strong handle of. That's why it is so important for there to be somebody that has her in custody, to have qualified individuals to be in a position to make that type of assessment. Because what might be obvious or not obvious to you and I, even to a loving father, may be different than what would be recognized by a qualified medical professional or even a well-trained Border Patrol agent.
That raises the question, did the Jakelin's father ever communicate to you whether or not she had any pre-existing conditions?
Our understanding, and certainly we have discussed that with the father, is that she was generally in very good health.
It was the middle of the night. Do we know if she and her father were asleep in that 8-hour period? Has he mentioned that they slept in the Sally Port? Could she have been deteriorating through the night while they were essentially sleeping?
Again, we don't, we can't, Mr. Cualcos can't associate times. His daughter was awake for a period of that time. He has indicated that she may have dozed off occasionally, but I think overall he said that she was awake a good part of that 8-hour period.
And he was awake?
Yes.
The whole night he was awake?
That we don't know. We don't know if he's awake all night. You know, one of the things that happened here is that, according to Border Patrol, is that the first bus that left Antelope Wells was filled with unaccompanied minors. And one of our concerns is under the Flores Agreement, which governs the arrest and detention of minors by immigration, is that agreement is applicable to accompanied as well as unaccompanied minors. So Jakelin, as a minor, was a class member of Flores and had the right to be treated just like the unaccompanied minors that were detained that evening. And so a simple question we have for a fair and objective investigation is why was Jakelin treated differently than the unaccompanied minors, and why didn't they act with the same urgency to have her depart Antelope Wells and get to the Lordsburg station?
¿Pudieras mencionar eso en español, por favor?
Okay, voy a tratar. Hay un acuerdo en un caso que se llama Flores, y este caso tiene como 21 años, y la decisión y la orden en este caso es para asegurar que los niños que están en la custodia de la patrulla fronteriza está bien tratada. Entonces, en esta noche había un grupo de menores sin el acompañamiento de los padres que salieron de Antelope Wells más pronto de llegar a Lordsburg. Y Jakelin, no importa que ella está con su papá, estaba acompañada, ella tenía los mismos derechos de los otros niños. Entonces, una pregunta que nosotros tenemos es por qué ella no salió más pronto, más en la noche, con los otros niños que no tenían padres.
Can you guys confirm she died of sepsis?
We're waiting for the autopsy results as well as the medical records.
You know where people got that from?
We do not know. We don't know.
Did her father ask for water at any point during that 8 hours? You said that he wasn't available. Do we know if he asked?
That honestly, I don't know the answer to that question, if he specifically asked for water.
What we do know is that during his journey through Mexico, he was very attentive
And
with
had-
regards to water and food to his daughter.
So they had no water at Antelope Wells at all?
That's our understanding.
That's understandable.
Any further questions?
Thank you so much.
All right,
Thank you.
you.